Boom, 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 baby. Happy Saturday to you. I hope you are having an amazing Saturday and an amazing weekend so far. My name is Don Terrell, and I want to welcome you to another great episode of The Color of Motion, where I like to say, hey, stories come in all shades. And I highlight people of color and diverse backgrounds in the industry of motion graphics, animation, visual effects, cartoons, and comics. This space that, hey, you got to know by now that I am just ecstatically crazy about. You know the drill. I start this off every show. Hop into the comments, say, hey, where you tuning in from so I can give you a shout out. But also, make sure that you hop on over to the Facebook page, get plugged in. Join us, facebook.com/groups/the color of motion. We're having a lot of fun over there. I come from a large family, so my goal is to make this family a big family. So come on over, join the family, have great conversation, a lot of fun. So definitely don't want you to miss out on anything. Remember, facebook.com/groups/the color of motion. Also, want to give a big shout out to today's sponsor of the show, DG Graphics. They take care of all our animations, overlays. They just all around make us look good. So if you are a business or a brand looking to level up your brand design, simplify your message, and just overall make you look good, you definitely want to reach out to them and connect with them. Again, appreciate DG Graphics for, hey, always sponsoring our show here. What else? Like I said, got a lot of great stuff going on with the show. Again, I always appreciate all my viewers that give me a little bit of their time every weekend and share with us. I hope if you are in the South or in the area where I'm at, Houston, you are staying cool because we definitely are hitting some record temperatures down here as well. What else? Like I said, I'm always make sure that you connect with me on all my social channels. You can connect with me, follow me. Definitely want to hear from you. Let me know what you think of the show. Any guests you may want me to try and get on, but hearing from my viewers definitely helps me to make the show the best possible show that I can make it. So always love hearing from the viewers. So there, you can connect with me on all my channels. Like I said, we are here each and every weekend, Saturday, 3 p.m. Central, live on the YouTube channel, LinkedIn, the Facebook group, and the website for the show. You can check us out live there. But I do always highly encourage everybody to hop on over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the bell notification, comment. That definitely helps the algorithm. There, you're able to check out all the other past great guests that's been on the show. So hop on over to youtube.com/Don Terrell. Like I said, we are always so happy to have you here. Also, the store is open. Make sure that you hop on over to the store, pick you up some Color of Motion swag. You know, my goal and my mission is to see as many people in the Color of Motion gear as possible. We have some great shirts, hoodies, mugs, and constantly putting new things on the site. So make sure that you hop on over to thecolorofmotion.net/swag and pick you up something nice. The only thing I request of you is if you do, just make sure that you take a picture of yourself, shoot it on over to me so that I can share it on the show and on the social channels. That'll definitely, highlight you and highlight the show as well. You'll definitely find some nice gear on the show, on the store, Oh, man. Mr. Ken, I appreciate you tuning in. I'm always always weary when I pull in your comments because you put some long comments in here. But as always, brother, I always appreciate you supporting the show, stopping by for sure, and always being a loyal viewer of the show. So thanks a lot there, Ken, for tuning in and showing up. Like I said, I am super excited about this episode and sitting down and talking with this brother. We had a chance to connect about a year ago. Saw his work, really wanted to get him on the show, and just super honored to have him on and sit and share his journey and what he's doing for sure. So, I think without further ado, I think we can pretty much kind of get this show on the road. Let's do it. Yes, yes, yes. We are ready to get this show on the road. Like I said, I hope you are as excited as I am about this episode and getting ready to sit down and talk with this brother. And without further ado, let's get it started. My next guest, he is a VFX supervisor, director, and former animator who was born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica in the early 80s. He immigrated to the U.S. as a teenager, East Orange, New Jersey, specifically, which is where he got his first taste of animation in high school. A teacher by the name of Vincent Potuto, I hope I got that right, Vincent, so please forgive me if I didn't, started an animation program, and that's where his love of animation started. He got to practice and learn 2D animation techniques as well as get his feet wet in a little bit of 3D via the software Lightwave 3D, which is what we have in common. His animation program in high school gained regional success via competitions and showcases, and by the end of high school, he had been given a special presidential scholarship to attend the School of Visual Arts in New York City to study computer animation. SVA at the time had been considered one of the top 10 art schools in the nation. This gave him an opportunity to study his dream and live in the city. After graduating SVA in 2004, he interned and worked in New York City as a commercial 3D generalist for a year before moving to Los Angeles. In 2005, he decided to attend the Computer Graphics and Animation Conference called CGRAPH, which I love, which at the time only took place in Los Angeles yearly. The goal was to shop his demo reel around, make connections, and see if any companies were hiring entry-level artists. Luckily enough, digital domain, was looking to train and hire match movers. He flew back out, took the test, and got hired. His first major project there was working on Clint Eastwood's Flags of Our Father film. From there, he worked his way into the commercials department as a 3D animator, and as they say, the rest is history. Everybody, please help me welcome my very special guest and friend, Mr. Ruel Smith. Yeah, so honored and great to have you on the show. I've been so looking forward to this, and can't wait to sit down and dive into your story.
Thank you for having me, Don. I appreciate it. That was like the greatest intro of a podcast I've ever been on ever. So thank
Well,
you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I always like to say, hey, we work to make all our guests that come on feel like the superstars that they are.
Oh man. Yeah.
And so we try and make it a great experience for you.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
For sure, for sure. Just like I said, a few little shout outs before we get started. Mr. Ken, again, I appreciate you always supporting the show and being a part of the Color of Motion family, and just showing up. Mr. Igor, appreciate you there coming by. I'm gonna try and get these a little larger for sure. Let me move this over here. I want to get this a little larger. But I appreciate you always, again, everybody being a part of the family and the show. Yeah, I want to get this here. Okay, I'll wait till the next one. But we're going to start off. Because I wanted to know what was it specifically about animation that really kind of hooked you, you know, in the beginning.
Yeah. So I mean, I was always the kid that watched a lot of Saturday morning, Sunday morning cartoons in Jamaica. Tom and Jerry, Elmer Fudd, Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes, all those. But I think the singular moment for me was I was the kid that saw Lion King,
Mm,
and then literally in the middle of it said, that's what I want to do. I would love to do that for the rest of my life or as a
nice.
career. And if I can figure out how to do that, that would be amazing. So the singular inspiration was Lion King. And
Gotcha,
then from
gotcha.
there, it was just being a fan. And then until I moved to the US was when I got the opportunity to even study animation.
Yeah, yeah. Now, are you like a lot of artists that are here, or animators, or people in the industry that are here that when they were young, they just didn't think that anybody did this for a living, and made a good living, I guess, from it. And so it always surprised us, like, oh, okay, I didn't know anybody. This is what people did for a living and could make a living
Gotcha.
doing this.
I think that was more so my family than me. Like,
Mm,
and it wasn't even, I think at that age, it wasn't even like doing it as a living. It was, if I can spend my days just doing this, then I don't care about anything else. It will work itself out. I would say the one other film. So number one is Lion King.
yeah.
Number two is Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Those are the two films that kind of shaped. If I could figure out how to just do this and just spend my free time, all my time,
Yeah.
just doing this, the obsession kind of started there. And I think just naturally, like, I think once I started dipping into the behind the scenes, like you started getting a chance to see some of those behind the scenes, how they made this on VHS back in the 90s, there was always a thing that, like, if someone did this,
Yeah.
then I could get the opportunity to figure out how to do that as
Yeah.
well. Like, there's got to be a community out there that would accept me in doing that. So it was never like I just naturally thought somebody's doing this.
Yeah.
So if I can go join them and do this, then everything will work itself out.
Yeah, I think it's always the family that you kind of have to convince, like your parents.
Yeah,
People didn't
Caribbean
tell me
parents,
this.
man. My mom is a nurse. Caribbean parents. So yeah,
And I've had a few Caribbean artists on the show. Definitely, they say the same thing for sure. But was that something that you realized early on? that this was something I wanted to do, but I was going to have to move to the States. It's kind of growing. I think now in Jamaica, the industry is,
Yeah.
starting to pick up, and opportunities are starting to present themselves. But early on, was that something that you had in your mind that, well, if I'm going to get serious in this, I need to move to the States and really get into it?
No, I would say that was by chance. I think the fortunate thing that helped me out was I realized I wanted to do that. I would love to do that in Jamaica, work on cartoons. It wasn't
Yeah.
animation at the time. It was just like I would love to be able to just work on cartoons. Um, but then the reality immediately hit that there was no opportunity and hope for this,
Yeah.
and this is the early to mid 90s
Yeah.
in Jamaica. And so from going from this is what I would love to do, this would be the dream, to the reality, the cold water of like that, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I think then it kind of tabled it. And then, my mom who had already lived in the US, I grew up with my grandmother, and my mom who had already lived in the US, she migrated for me. Um, and when I moved to the States, I just so happened to land at a school where there's a teacher starting, Mr. Vincent Potuto, late great Mr. Vincent Potuto, who is starting an animation program. So I went from, oh, I would love to do this, no hope in doing this, to then getting an opportunity and a chance by sheer luck and miracle,
Yeah.
that this teacher was doing this animation program. And I think the alignment of all those things helped me take it serious, of just even getting the inkling of opportunity made me latch onto it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, now, so do you still have family back in Jamaica, or
Yeah.
is most
Yeah.
now, is that something that you may look forward towards in the future, kind of seeing how you can bring more opportunities or expose more opportunities to the people of the Caribbean, and specifically Jamaica?
Yeah, I would love that. Would be amazing. I've tried reaching out to a couple places, and just no ping back has happened. I got Wayne, who
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
interviewed. I think
Wayne.
I think
Yeah.
I think I think he's the biggest like lightning rod and proponent for, I would say, Jamaican 3D
Yeah.
CG
Yeah.
right now. There's just little pockets, right? So there is obviously there's Jamaica, but then there's East Orange or
Yeah.
Newark, New Jersey,
Yeah. Yeah.
that area, and then there's New York City. And I think I think just the Black diaspora.
Yeah.
I think in general, like just Black and Brown folks in
Yeah.
underserved areas. I think I wouldn't mind where exactly,
Yeah.
per se. I wouldn't be too picky as long as I'm able to help,
Yeah.
whether it's inspire or help or serve
Yeah.
those areas.
Now, do you feel like that is um, kind of one of the, I guess, big hurdles for kids that look like us, or younger people that look like us? Fortunately for you, you were exposed at a very early age by a teacher that
Yep.
exposed you to it. It's going to take, and like you said, people like Wayne are doing that, really giving back. Like I
Mhm.
said, I've met a number of people. Aisha King, she does a lot in Barbados with her company and
Nice.
business. So it's starting to be more. But do you feel like that needs to be more? Because like I said, I don't think when I was going to school that any artists or anything came in, nobody came into the school to really expose me, or
Yep.
kids that look like me, to the opportunity that, hey, this is a great industry that you can do a lot of different things in. It was just we're not normally exposed to these type of things early on.
Gotcha. I mean, it's a two pronged. I would say it's the most exposed because of social media and the internet now than it
Yeah.
was back in the 90s or the 80s, right? So I would say just by getting on YouTube, just by getting on social media, you can see more of it now, which we didn't have. We didn't. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't have. I didn't use the internet until I came to the U.S.
Oh wow.
Right.
Okay.
And so um, I think the main thing is I would say is capturing the people that have that curiosity.
Yeah.
It's putting the it's helping shape the curiosity, helping inspire the curiosity and the obsession,
Yeah.
right? Because then at the same time, it wasn't just me that was the only person in my high school
Yeah.
that was exposed to animation, right? And the rate of people who took advantage of it and was able to propel it into a career, um, whether they wanted to or not, it's still a slim margin. So I think it's more so finding the people that are the students or the kids that are really curious about it and obsessed and really like it, and then
Yeah.
shaping those.
Yeah.
That's what I would say, because it to me, and just from my perspective looking at it, it's way more accessible now than it was.
For sure.
Like Animation Mentor didn't start until a year after I graduated
Yeah.
college,
Yeah.
right? Where you could be anywhere in the world and learn from the greatest people
Yeah.
working in the business at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, and you just brought up a great point that I've talked to a few guests about the advantage or disadvantage of a lot of these online schools versus going to a brick and mortar school like you did, the School of Visual Arts. Like I said, especially now that the big thing is coming out of school with massive amounts of debt.
Mhm.
You know, what are your kind of thoughts on online schools versus in-person schools? I mean, people
Yeah.
learn differently, and of course it's you got to be really self-motivated to be
Yep.
doing work online. But for you, what like I said, we're seeing an explosion of a lot of online schools. Animation Mentor, Noman, has an online portion, and a lot of
Yep.
these schools that are now, like I said, starting to not be locked into geography for
Yeah.
learning and getting information out.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. It's funny. I was just thinking about a portion of that um, question: to learn yourself versus going to school, going to traditional school,
Yeah.
or even the online. I think obviously the point of it is going to start from the price point, what you can afford,
Mm-hmm.
monetarily, funds wise. Um, I would say the online schools, and they've probably grown since then,
Yeah.
but so I may be speaking out of terms, but the online schools are more trade schools and technical. So if you're trying to learn a specific technical thing,
Yeah.
there is that. So there's the plus of that. Whereas an art school, you're going to school, you might not get the greatest training in in a specific technical skill set, but
Yeah.
you're going to get a much more rounded,
Broader.
creative
Yeah.
artist shaping. But then also you're doing it with other people, right?
Yeah.
Like 90% of my jobs after college was my classmates, right?
Yeah.
It was they used to say like it's who you know to get you in the door and what you know that keeps you in the door,
Yeah.
right? And so I think what helped me is more so me going to art school made me think like an artist and think more creative to be able to expand beyond just being an animator,
Yeah.
to try directing live action, directing live action with VFX, doing
Yeah.
animation, like to be able to get into writing,
Yeah.
right? And I think going to art school helped me do that. Whereas I think if I'd gone to just Animation Mentor or I'd gone to Noman and just taken a specific
Yeah.
course, I would have been more just sharpened within being an animator or within a particular software.
Yeah.
So I would say that about that. As far as like DIY, whereas like learning on your own, learning from online, like YouTube or whatever, versus learning, going to a traditional school, I think I think you need both. Like I think there's no point in your life,
Yeah.
whether you're a student, whether you're a beginner in the field, whether you're a veteran in the field, you will always do both. You will always sit down and learn from someone from a proverbial curriculum,
Yeah.
and you will always need to learn on your own,
Yeah.
right? On every phase, whether you're in the industry, You might take a course, you might learn from a mentor, you might learn from someone who teaches you, but it's going to be up to you to go home and learn extra stuff. Same thing in college, in school. So I think it isn't a one or the other. It's a both. If you want to stand out and be really good.
Well, in that respect, do you feel like you were saying, going to a school, brick and mortar school, or even I guess online, it really is about building relationships, whether it's a relationship with your instructors or the other
Mm-hmm.
people that are taking it. But for a brick and mortar school, do you feel like it the degree bears any weight more so than whether or not you can do the work and the quality of the work that you're able to do?
The paper
Unless you're going into
itself,
like teaching, I
yeah,
mean, or an instructor
yeah.
type of thing, do you feel like getting into the industry, a degree bears more weight than, say, somebody that's just really good and may have learned on his own
No,
type
I mean,
thing, or that type?
I've worked with a bunch of artists that they just went to a community college, learned Maya. When I was
Yeah,
at Rhythm and Hughes, went to a community college, learned Maya just enough to do animation mentor. And I forgot his name, but like he came, like he was a lead animator by the age of 20, 21. Now that's
wow,
few and far in between, right?
yeah,
He was talented. He was going to get there regardless.
yeah,
I would say maybe not the degree, but the experience and the friendships,
yeah,
right? Like some of my closest friends weren't even in computer art and animation. I just went back to go premiere my film on the East Coast,
yeah,
and some of my best friends, they were comic book artists. They
yeah,
were comic book and they were illustration and they were photography. My close friend, graphic design, Jen
yeah.
Moy, um, Sergio, who
For
did the
your film,
poster for my short. He's in advertisement. We went to college together.
yeah,
So there is bringing together or building friendships with people completely outside of just being in computer art and
yeah,
animation, right?
yeah,
I graduated '04. I've known them since 2000, 2001. So that's
okay,
going on 23 years right now, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so I would say it's not necessarily the paper or the degree, but the network and the friendship. Outside of the network, the friendship and the
yeah,
stuff that you learn that builds the character that is you, um, outside of just the technical zeros and ones of being an animator that you
yeah,
might not necessarily get from um, going to Animation Mentor and I Animate, which
yeah,
you're gonna get the greatest animation training experience at
yeah,
those, but then the indelible intangibles
yeah,
that
yeah,
you get. So it's I wish for me, I honestly wish I did both, right? And it's funny, I had the opportunity, Bobby Beck, when I was at SIGGRAPH, that '05.
yeah.
It was like, hey man, I'm starting this thing up. You should sign up and do it. And I'm like, bro, I just graduated. I got loans. And at that
That's
time,
so
it was like, what was it like, 8 grand maybe
yeah,
at the
yeah.
time, nine
Yeah,
grand,
when it first
and I
started out.
was, and he came to me, he himself pitched it like you should sign up, you'd get the greatest. I'm like, I'm not thinking about going back to school right now. But in hindsight, if I could give myself advice,
Yeah,
going back,
yeah,
I did school and I would have done Animation Mentor for that
yeah,
program.
yeah,
I have a buddy, Will, he's an animator, Will Kistler. He ended up doing it and I saw how it benefited his career and his
yeah,
skill sets as an animator.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of, like you said, like, I think one of the benefits of online school, you could always go back, and they're offering like siloed classes or just to enhance your skill set in
Yep.
one area or another. So
Yep.
that's, I think, another good thing about, you know, having access to online, great
Absolutely.
online, schools that are taught by professionals, that you can always go back and take courses and things like that to really
Yep.
sharpen your skills. What
And it
what
opens up the playing field, right? Sorry, it
Yeah,
opens up the playing field for people who can't get to New York or can't get
yeah,
to LA
yeah,
or SCAD or Ringling or
yeah,
Sheridan. If you're on the other side of the world at this point, you just need an internet and a
yeah,
computer, right?
yeah.
So it has its benefits.
Definitely, definitely. And speaking on that, what was your overall experience going to, the School of Visual Arts and your additional training? What were the things that, kind of stuck with you that you pulled out that really helped you, along in this industry?
And I've said this multiple times too in other ways. I just the priceless experience of being an art student in New York City, from 2000 to 2004, right? Living in the city.
Yeah,
And so you think of like artists, from yesteryears, you think of the Basquiat's
yeah,
and the Warhols and the whoever, the 90s, the gritty 90s of New York City. Um, um, I think for me, I would say the biggest thing was one, living in the city. The city is its own
yeah,
creative
yeah,
ecosystem, and it's its own thing. But like what people forget, the I consider myself the 9/11
mm,
student. I was in the city, looked
city.
out the window, and saw the second tower fall
Wow,
right
wow,
in front of
yeah,
my eyes, and that changed everything. What I came to New York City as an artist for, and what I was hoping, that changed after my freshman year. It was
yeah,
my first week of my sophomore year, right?
wow,
It was 9/11. 3 weeks, 3 months later, I bought my first cell phone, in the Flatiron building at the base in the Sprint store, because that wasn't a thing. Everyone
yeah,
having a cell phone was not a thing prior to 9/11, right?
mm,
And no, it's like after that, because people couldn't get contact. My mom couldn't get contact with me.
yeah,
People
yeah,
couldn't get contact with their kids, and so because two of the antennas was on the towers,
towers.
and
Wow,
so I think that changed everything. And then the type of art, then what society became,
yeah,
especially living in New York City for the next 3 to 4 years,
yeah,
was dictated by that, right? And I think the lesson that I got from that was so many things, that you're coming into a situation and you have an expectation and a thing that you're looking for, and just things outside of your control on a national or a global level can
yeah,
completely change the trajectory in the course of what you were hoping that was going to happen, that you're going to have to deal with,
yeah,
right? And you're going to have to adjust to. 9/11 for me was the first thing. 3 4 years after I graduated was the recession,
yeah, yeah,
right? Um, how jobs, when I moved to LA, because that was where all the animation and 99% of the animation and visual effects jobs were LA,
yeah,
right? With a little bit of San Francisco with Pixar and ILM
yeah,
and Tippett. But then within 5 years, a lot of the jobs started going to Vancouver and more London,
yeah,
and now it's Montreal, right?
yeah,
And and so then there was that, and then way after that was the pandemic. And so I think being an SVA, being in New York City, especially at that time, helped me kind of build and to be able to adjust to the times, and that you live in your imagination as a creative, as an artist. You're dreaming up worlds, but art is going to always imitate life,
yeah,
right? And the signs of the times is going to inspire the type of art you're probably going to create, or people around you are going to create, or the industry is going to demand, or society is going to demand. And you're seeing that throughout time. You're seeing that with the pandemic, not being
yeah,
able to go film or create or shoot. You have to find new ways to do that. You're seeing that during the recession, where people remember like kids graduating. I was fortunate enough. I'd had 3 to 4 years in the industry.
yeah,
So what had happened was, when the recession hit, um, people who were senior were getting let go,
yeah,
and kids coming out of college with no experience were finding a hard time getting jobs.
yeah,
So it was that Goldilocks sweet spot of people with 4 to 5 years of experience in the industry. Your pay wasn't going up, but you were getting levied more responsibilities and getting a chance to move up and take advantage of an unfortunate situation. And so for me, outside of just, being in the early 2000s, an artist, art student in New York City, and just letting that soak in, being adjusting to the times and being able to adjust to the times no matter what the circumstance.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I'd be interested to know because, like I said, I think everybody, can remember what they were doing, where they were at during that time. It's those seminal moments in history where, like
Yep.
you said, it makes a shift for you. Um, and like I said, we saw that especially in creatives. I saw that when George Floyd got murdered. We started seeing people express themselves in
Yep.
different ways. Um, coming out of that 9/11, how did that kind of, obviously it shifted your world perspective, but for the art that you were creating, the things that you were doing, how did that, if any, did it kind of shift or make you think differently about, I guess, the type of things that you wanted to create?
It I think it made you look outside of your immediate world or your imaginary world, because this was a real thing that was happening, and it
Yeah,
was happening in your, literally in your backyard. My dorms at the time was 23rd and Lexington, called the George Washington at the time. Across the street was the Armory, and so I think naturally that's where people just posted photos of the missing
yeah,
along our block, right? And um, I think it made you just look outside of your fairy tale world
yeah,
to see the things that are happening around you and look at it from a much more global perspective, right?
yeah,
And I think there was, outside of like the terrorism kind of thing, how we can come together. There were other moments as well. The blackout, the Manhattan blackout,
yeah,
was another big thing where New Yorkers out the gate are not necessarily the kindest or nicest to you straight out the gate. But
yeah,
the one thing that they know how to do is when stuff goes crazy, they know how to come together and camaraderie. And so I think thinking outside of yourself. I think looking at community that's not just you, not just your race, but also culture on a global scale.
yeah, yeah,
And I think for me it was just looking at art, looking at art or being creative through that lens that's a little bit more global.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, And another thing that's really kind of dear to my heart there is you spoke. You got kind of your feet wet in animation using Lightwave 3D,
Yeah.
which for me that kind of really helped me because I know when I first started learning 3D, I got sat down in front of Softimage. I don't know if you remember,
Yep.
but it was like that really turned me off to really wanting to learn 3D. It really did. It was amazing software in the time,
Yeah.
at its time, but it was just really dense, and it was
Yep.
really hard for me to really grasp. And then the company I was kind of freelancing for, doing design work, they started selling Lightwave, and so when I sat down in front of Lightwave, that just okay, I can get this. What was for you? What was Lightwave 3D? Did you dabble in any other type of programs, or what was Lightwave 3D for you? Because for me, like I said, it was, I guess, kind of the saving grace because it was really
Gotcha.
simple for me to wrap my head around 3D.
Yeah. It's my entry point. So we were doing 2D animation. We were learning cell animation in high
Okay.
school. Our teacher was teaching that. He was a Disney nerd, a Disney geek. Like he just loved, he great illustrator himself. And he would get the tutorials from the neighboring college. And so I think he bootlegged the VHS on on Lightwave. So he did, so the neighboring college, which I think he did some stints of teaching there.
Yeah.
And he bootlegged the software, and he bootlegged the VHS, and it was these two VHS tapes. It was one on how they did the Titanic,
Yeah.
because I think they used Lightwave to do it to
Yeah.
Titanic, and it was how they did that, and then Tremor, with Kevin Bacon,
Yeah.
and
Tremors.
they modeled,
Yeah.
they modeled that in Lightwave. So they had a how they modeled that, how they did the Titanic, and I think a couple of how you make a spoon and a saucer and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And I remember he brought the computer in and sat it in the corner. And at the time, it was just, if you finish up your 2D work early, you can go play around with this.
Yeah.
And it was just to play around. And he had the 3 VHS tapes. And I remember looking at it, and a couple of the other kids, they just ran over there and they're just pushing and pulling, right? They're just messing around, just for the sheer fun.
Yeah.
And I remember I just thought, there's something special here, right? Like this is the future. I watched Jurassic Park, and I was like, they did Tremor on this. I saw Tremor. I saw Titanic. How? And I was like, this is much more serious than just picking up a couple stuff and playing around and knocking yourselves out.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, but Lightwave was really big for sci-fi TV because Babylon 5 was done with it. Sequest was used in it. So it was really good.
And there was the modeler, and then there was the renderer. There was 2 separate at the time.
And I had this conversation I was just having this conversation yesterday with a friend, because we both kind of started in Lightwave, but I always felt like that was kind of the Achilles heel or the little wonkiness of it. It was 2 separate programs. Sometimes you may get the hub working to where you could push things back and forth. Sometimes it wouldn't. But it was, like I said, what hooked me was, okay, wow, they're doing some pretty cool stuff. Like I said, Babylon 5, all the sci-fi TV shows. And it was just such a really lightweight, interesting. Plus, it ran on the Mac as well.
It ran on the Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I recognized something in the moment that I need to take this seriously, and I think my classmates at the time, they ran over and they just opened up the software and they were just pushing and pulling. They were making a cube and a cylinder, and they were making the cone, putting it on top of the cylinder, and building like this Lego, like first grade level, like houses and stuff, right? But they're just pushing and pulling until they like knocked themselves out, and then they were bored, and then they moved on. And I remember looking at them, and I remember taking up the tutorials, and I just sat in the corner by the VHS, and I just watched all of the like all the tutorials, and I learned like the getting started with the menus and stuff. And I just sat there and I watched it. And then I watched like how they did this, making a saucer and a teapot and a spoon and a fork, and then how they did Tremor. And then once I kind of like binged that, once they knocked themselves out and they were like, okay, this is boring, then I went over to the computer and I start, pushing and pulling. And then I think I did that for 2 years in high school. I mean, the main thing was still learning traditional animation. And then the extracurricular was just, learning that. And I was the only one that kind of stayed with the 3D. And then I think when I went to college, the industry, I would say what they were teaching in college was Maya. It wasn't even Autodesk. It was Alias Wavefront. Alias at the time.
Alias Wavefront,
So that was my dabble in high school, Lightwave. And then the moment I got to college, it became Maya.
Yeah. And we're gonna dive into this more because, like you said, now you've kind of shifted more into VFX and live action directing. But what are your thoughts? Because, like I said, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine about Lightwave, and they're trying to bring Lightwave, got bought up again, and they're trying to bring back Lightwave.
Oh, wow.
Which I was telling him, it's been such a, Lightwave had such a long time being kind of inactive and not being developed or anything like that. You've got this plethora of software out there. what do you think of like a lot of the tools now we're starting to see, especially as a filmmaker and a VFX person, of software like Unreal and
Hmm.
using that in what you're doing? Blender, which is a great software
Yep.
that's free, that I'm learning. So you're starting, like I said, we've got this plethora of great software now. What are your thoughts on some of the tools that we're starting to see? And we haven't even talked about, just the AI that's kind of getting developed in these spaces of
Yeah.
what you're able to do. What are your thoughts on like Unreal and some of the other great tools that we're now starting to see that are now even more readily available? I think the other big thing about Lightwave is it wasn't as expensive as Softimage or Maya or
Yep.
some of the other 3D Studio, some of the other software that was out there.
Hmm. Yeah. So I would say with all like the tools are always going to become obsolete, right? Like they're always going to evolve. There's going to be a new shiny toy. There's going to
Yeah,
be a new tool, and I think the principles is what stays and just get carried over to the new tools. So I think first and foremost for anyone learning, um, it's the principles. Learn the foundations, learn the fundamentals, learn the principles, learn the why you're doing this, what you're trying to achieve, and then you can pick the tools that serves you best, right? And you're seeing, with respect, you're saying they're trying to bring Lightwave back. Um, on the opposite side of that, the new cool hot, new person on campus now is Unreal Engine,
yeah,
and their biggest issue right now is the user base, right? Like who still has the market and gaining that market. The biggest thing, like I've spent the last year and a half, working really closely with
mm,
Unreal Engine and doing a lot of Unreal stuff. Not me, but like overseeing and working, partnering
yeah,
with, more Unreal virtual production technicians. And the biggest thing is like bringing in animators and animation and having them do that in Unreal. And the biggest thing is like most animators, your seasoned animator, your really good animator, they're still using Maya.
mm,
So it's converting these people to learn a new tool set,
yeah,
but then converting all um, the tools that you're used to inside of Unreal. And so it obviously starts with the market space, right? Nuke is still the biggest compositing
yeah.
program. Maya is still the biggest space for character animation.
For character
Um,
animation, yeah,
and then, but I think Cinema 4D is right there in commercials. Blender is right there, especially because of the the pricing point is free.
yeah,
It's free.
yeah,
Um, and so I think it's a balance. I think there are more people, more tools in this space right now. I see, unless Unreal, I feel like unless Lightwave gets into the real time space,
yeah.
they're not gonna
Yeah.
catch up to Maya,
That's what I was telling
Cinema
my friend. I
4D,
said
and
they got a
yeah,
long gap to really,
yeah.
you know,
They got to catch up to
cross.
Blender, which is
Yeah,
Blender is the next person up. And
yeah,
but honestly, to be real with you, outside of all of those, Houdini, who's been around for a really long time, but
yeah,
they've been catching up in the rigging space, not just the dynamics. It's known for the dynamic, but the
yeah,
lighting and rendering space, and now like the rigging and a
yeah,
little bit of animating.
yeah,
Um, they're it's at the end of the day, it's whatever the tool that the industry is kind of using right
yeah,
now, whatever the whatever tool the studio is using, you end up coming in and just learning what's needed.
yeah,
Um, yeah, that's
yeah.
what I would say.
Well, and to that to that point, um, do you feel like um, artists today kind of have that flexibility that you had with digital domain, where they were training, really gave you the flexibility to learn it, as opposed to now studios, because like I said, movies are so heavy, animation, we're so used to CGI, they're expecting you to really hit the ground kind of running. Is it best to start off at a small studio where you do have that pace to kind of get yourself going, or
Mm.
do you see more and more studios not having the time to handhold and really, you know, kind of train artists in what they're doing and the tools that they're using?
Yeah, I think just across the board, whether it's a small studio or a large studio, studios are having artists are finding it a hard time. You got to be a little bit more game ready
Yeah,
coming in. Um, I would say that honestly, get in where you can get in, whether it's a small studio or a big studio, wherever the door is open, get in
you hear that,
and
everybody? Get in where you can.
get in where you can. Don't, you know what I mean? Like, don't pick if you have the opportunity. It also depends on the type of stuff you want to work on.
Yeah,
If you love the commercial stuff, if you want to work on commercials, if you know you want to work on films and movies, you got to
yeah,
cater your skill sets towards that.
yeah,
I would say if commercial and advertising is the space that you want to be in, it doesn't hurt learning. Starting out with Cinema 4D and After
yeah,
Effects, they're a little bit cheaper pricing points, and being a generalist helps you better in that space.
yeah,
Um, I would say if you want to work on features and television, high end television, it's going to be the Mayas, it's going to be the Nukes, it's going to be the Mud Boxes and the Maris and
yeah,
all those softwares. Houdini, it's going to be those the more specialty spaces.
yeah. ZBrush,
Um,
yeah,
ZBrush. I would say
ZBrush,
ZBrush
yeah,
over the Mud Boxes. So it's one figuring out where you want to be,
yeah,
um, where you would love to be,
yeah,
and then tailoring those software skill sets to that. But get in wherever you can, wherever the opportunities apply to everything. And then if you have the pick of the litter,
yeah,
choose from the pick of the litter. I would say a kid coming in right now. It's funny. I said this 5 years ago, um, and they looked at me like I told them to go move to Mars and go build a colony. I said Unreal Engine is coming, and I said
mm,
Houdini, and I
yeah,
said real time and virtual production is coming. I said learn Unreal Engine
yeah,
and or Houdini.
yeah,
If you don't have if you don't have a pick of you know what I mean, like you're not biased to one particular thing you want to do,
yeah,
those are the things that you should learn. And Houdini and Unreal Engine virtual production
yeah,
is the space right now.
yeah,
I would say being a generalist in commercials, you can make there. VFX has been democratized from just the big studios, and if anything, the big studios are having a hard time to compete
yeah,
because there's a lot of mid-level and smaller studios that are creeping into the space. And I think being a generalist helps, these days, and you can make a lot of money if you're solid in being an After Effects generalist and like a Cinema 4D generalist, you can always find work and you can make a lot of money. Motion
yeah,
graphics, it's
yeah.
hard to find really good motion graphics
Artist,
artists
yeah,
and generalists in the game.
yeah,
So that's it's some of those things that I've said is hypocritical,
yeah,
and counter to each thing. But like I would say, get in where you fit in, get in the industry, learn as much as you can, try everything,
yeah,
because what you know now, what you want to do now, also might be different than what you end up being good at if you
yeah,
didn't try everything.
yeah,
And just learn as much as possible and position yourself as a person that where can I come in and best serve the team
yeah,
or best serve my lead or best serve the project.
yeah, yeah,
And chances are that's where you'll grow, is the spaces they need help the most.
yeah. It's been interesting though, with you saying that. What I've heard, especially like I said, the ones that are in kind of the film space, how they're craving and finding it hard to find those Unreal artists. You know,
Yep.
people that are really good at Unreal and like you said, real time is kind of the thing that's, studios are wanting, and software is really trying to kind of gear themselves towards, is something
Yep.
that you can produce in real time and see that. For
Yep.
you, what was that point that you shifted and decided that you wanted to get more into VFX and live action film, and that from moving from animation? Was there any particular thing that kind of drove
Mm.
you more towards that,
I
what you're
think the
doing now?
subconscious, yeah, I think the subconscious thing is going to art school, being an artist, as opposed to a technician. Um, I think a couple years into the industry, the artist bug kicked back in and wanting to tell my own stories, right? I think what laid the groundwork for that was when I got into the industry, working at a company like Digital Domain, you were doing more animation within visual effects. So I was working on films that were live action shot, and you're adding visual effects to it
Yeah,
and adding character animation to it. And so I did dabble. And then being a freelancer, I got to dabble in all aspects. So I got to work on just straight cartoons,
yeah,
feature film cartoons, or just strictly standard animation. I got to do commercials. I got to do work on video games. I got to work on game cinematics. I got to work on films that was just invisible VFX,
yeah,
right? And so I got to kind of a buffet of the entire industry. And I never, for the better or for worse, I never cemented my feet into one particular thing. I just kind of took, you're
yeah,
only as good as your next gig,
yeah,
right? And so I think 7, 8 years in, I started realizing that I'm tired of just being a button pusher.
yeah,
And I was ready to tell my own stories. And I started kind of, creating my own shorts and stuff like that, live action. And I think what's funny is, as a visual effects artist, as an animator, you're sitting behind a computer. I've been sitting in a dark room
yeah.
with no windows behind computer screens since freshman year of college, right?
Oh man.
And so that's 20 years, right? And so I think the necessity for survival made me wanted to do like live action directing, because the very last part of the process, which is editing
Yeah,
or post production, is in front of a computer in a
yeah,
dark room.
yeah,
Everything else is you're on location, you're networking, you're filming, you're collaborating with actors and a cinematographer and this and that, the third. And so I think an amalgamation of all of these things, being an artist and not just going to a trade school, but
yeah,
going to an art school, sparked the interest in, okay, I'm ready to tell my own stories. I'm ready to be creative in other aspects of just being an animator behind the keyboard.
yeah,
Um, and then wanting to get from behind, out of the room, the dark room,
yeah,
and from behind the computer and try my hand at other creative aspects. I think all this still things just kind of cascaded into, where I am with, just loving storytelling and loving
yeah,
filmmaking. At the end of the day, even as an animator, I love storytelling.
yeah.
I love filmmaking. I love telling stories, no matter the medium.
Gotcha, gotcha. Again, for everybody just tuning in, we're having an amazing conversation with my friend Ruel Smith, uh, VFX supervisor and director, and we're going to take a look in a little bit of some of his work. But just wanted to throw up some shout outs here. I want to make sure I get this right. Miss Granny, I appreciate you tuning in for sure. I want to get this up here. Appreciate you tuning in there, Miss Maggie, coming to the show and checking us out. Mr. Ken, any opportunity is a good opportunity for sure. Yeah, just make sure you get in because, like I said, you'll quickly find out what it is that you really enjoy doing, and you'll find what lane that you really kind of like being in. That's the beauty of it. There's so many things, and I've talked to some people, and because there's so many things within the industry, and you can just look at the end credits to see all the people that work on a project
Yep.
that you can do. If you're not a good animator, but you're good with people, you could be a showrunner or in HR. They still always need everybody that's a part of it. not necessarily thinking, oh, I got to be an animator or I got to be an artist or this and that. No, you don't necessarily have to be that in order to
Yep.
be in the industry. For you, I'm curious. Do you feel like um, the studios or movies today are more reliant on CG and effects? And two, do you feel like that puts an I won't say unwarranted or just a lot of weight on the visual effects person? I mean, you're a visual effects supervisor. I've heard a lot about how there's a lot of burnout, especially when you got
Yep.
machines like Marvel that are putting out movies that are they're just visual effects heavy,
Yep.
and you have studios like Digital Domain that or other studios, Blue Sky, that go under for one reason or another. Do you feel like there's and ultimately it does all come back to the story, whether or not it's a good story. But do you feel like it's used as a crutch sometimes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's visual effects is has always um, been used as sometimes as a shiny new toy, and it's gotten more exponential over the past, I would say, 8 years, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah,
I remember when a big show, when I was starting out, a big show um, was 300 visual effect shots. That was like a massive show. That is a baby show right now, right? Like shows are having like 1,300 visual
yeah,
effect shots, which
yeah,
is crazy.
yeah.
And
And you see all these different studios handling,
to the point not one studio can't handle it now, right?
yeah,
Like I remember when a show would be housed under one of the bigs,
yeah,
that they're just doing all the visual effects. Now it's like it's got to be piecemeal to different studio because it's just so much work. And not only the the quantity has gone up, the the quality and expectation, the ambitiousness has gone
expectations
up, but then the schedule has gone the other way, right?
tighter and tighter.
Because of the schedule. I remember when I first got in the industry, you could work on a film or like a blockbuster film,
Yeah,
right? Because you knew most of them would come out in the summer,
yeah,
right? They would come out in the summer. So what would happen is you're working on the film in like say September to like April,
yeah,
and then or September to April, May, and then you could take the summer off because they're not going to crew up again until
yeah,
the fall, and then you would work. So it was almost like a school,
yeah.
like a
Like
traditional
school.
school
Yeah,
schedule. And now you're doing three times the amount of work, and it's over like 3 months, right? And then you're jumping and jumping from film to film. And so, and even television now, like the amount of work that goes into a TV show.
yeah,
So I think there was a reliance, but it's not just unique to visual effects. This has always happened. Like once a particular once they hit a particular thing, a trend, it
yeah,
happens. Funny enough, someone said maybe a couple years ago that superhero films is the new spaghetti western
yeah,
era, right? Between like I want to say maybe the 50s to 70s, it was just nothing but spaghetti westerns
yeah,
that were being made. And I think this is, but I think now there's a it's been desensitized now. So I'm seeing an overcorrection, which you kind of heard with Bob Iger. Like he had kind of mentioned that like we're doing too much or they're doing too much, so they're
yeah,
going to
yeah, yeah,
walk back a little bit. And I think people are just like it's too much visual effects fatigue,
yeah,
right? Or
yeah,
just content fatigue.
yeah,
Um, Even with so yeah, I would say it's not just it is happening in visual effects, but it's
yeah,
not just visual effects. You're seeing it with just content,
yeah,
right? Like even during the pandemic, when you couldn't film, much more visual effects and CG was created as out of necessity to keep up with the demands of shows because they couldn't go
yeah,
shoot physical production. Honestly, you're talking about getting your opportunity and just getting where you can. I got my opportunity in visual effects as a visual effects supervisor out of the necessity for a production company needing more visual effects experience. As an animator, I was trying to quit or retire from animation, being an animator, to move into directing. That was the goal, to be a film narrative director. And literally, a couple weeks later, the entire world locked down. We went into lockdown.
Yeah.
And we couldn't gather people together in one location to go film. That was out of the question for like a year and a half. And so this company reached out to me, and they were looking for, they couldn't win any CG jobs.
Yeah.
The name of the company is Step Studios. At the time, they were having a hard time winning CG jobs because they didn't have a CG visual effects department. And they presented the opportunity, and it was like, I was looking for directing experience. And so they gave me the opportunity to direct commercials. And I came on as a VFX supervisor to help them bring in CG and VFX experience to win more. And so that whole started, I would say, the race of more CG driven content on top of streaming, which now everyone had their own streaming platform. So now there was a need. Paramount, Universal, Apple, Disney, Netflix needed to fill their stuff with more visual effects and CG driven content. So the trend, it isn't just unique to CG or visual effects, even though it's there. It's to the entire industry.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it always seems to be that what's the hot thing, and people jump on that hot thing. Like I said, it was, when Disney was just starting out and started to see success, 2D, animation was a hot thing. Then when Pixar did Toy Story, everybody wanted to do CG. Like I said, and then Marvel started coming out and really, putting out these blockbuster movies, CG. Let's throw CG. Now it's AI. So it's always something new that comes along that people are kind of infatuated with or feel like, let's see how we can use this.
But I think it'll overcorrect itself. It'll overcorrect itself because it is expensive. At the end of the day, visual effects is still extremely expensive. It's time consuming, and it can be stressful for the production, for the visual effects artists themselves, for the visual effects studios and animation studios themselves. So I do believe it'll overcorrect.
Yeah. And I think it comes down, like I said, I don't know, you heard some studios that shut down. There are, and I didn't really kind of get it until I heard about it, that, studios are bidding on these projects to do for visual effects studios are bidding on these projects. So maybe not overcommitting themselves to what they can do or the type of work that they can put out, as opposed to putting more pressure on the VFX artists to crank out this stuff. I think it's going to be, like you said, a balance of, they're going to have to balance, like, okay, we can do this many shots. And I get it, everybody wants the feather of having worked on a Marvel movie or a big time movie. But they do have to take into account the people that are creating this stuff and not burn them out or really drive them to depression or whatever it is that they're doing. Before we dive into some more questions, let's take a look at some of Ruel's work. Again, everybody, please make sure you jump into the comments and say hey and give a shout out. But we're going to take a quick look at Ruel's demo reel and then come back and have some more fun conversation here.
Took 35 people along with him. 35 were kids.
And there's our ride.
I'm here, sweet cheeks. Ready to go?
Tell me your wife wanted to do this. this? Sam and I aren't married. Special lady friend, please. And she insisted on coming.
This is Angel Prime. Enemy hunters in pursuit.
Science division says they turned that thing on. We're all dead.
I'm sick of this pointless, never-ending missions.
I'm gonna need you to put that down, soldier, and that's an order.
I can't. I can't.
We're all going home.
Some amazing work there for sure. I'm curious, for you, you just, like I said, are getting traction on the festival circuit with your movie, Angel Prime. What was kind of the thing that you learned about yourself doing that? Like I said, you've been kind of making this transition into creating your own stories, directing, telling your own stories. What was, the thing that you learned about yourself doing this project?
Man, yeah. That's a great question. I feel like when it comes to each film, whether it's a short or a feature, you do or you work on, it's almost like running a marathon. I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna learn so much more about yourself than you did not know prior. This one I learned how building a community and a tribe was important. Chris Nortrum, who we've known each other through Digital Domain, we met at Digital Domain. We've known each other at Digital Domain for a long time. And going into my last year before I decided to kind of transition, we literally, kind of rekindled at the lunch table.
Yeah.
And we just, I mentioned, obviously I'm a VFX artist, but I'm moving into directing. And he mentioned he would love to move into writing. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And then, so the story was his. And then he pitched me the short, the screenplay, and I read it and I really liked it. And so that's where the original team up, the start of Angel Prime, or what became Angel Prime, was, he's a writer and creator, and I moved into directing. And so building that tribe of people that it would take to get this film done, because it was pretty much a 3-year journey, making the film, like from script to screen.
Yeah.
I would not have been able to do it, one, without another person who is fully, attached to the project. It's his baby as it is much mine. And then building out the tribe and the community. It takes a village to make it, and I wouldn't have gotten it done. It would have fell off to the wayside. Just how difficult and grueling it took to do it, because we went out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. We shot that in the middle of the pandemic. We shot that out in the middle of the Mojave Desert.
Wow.
And then spent an entire year in visual effects and begging a lot of my friends that I've worked with to help me do the visual effects on it. And so that the biggest lesson was building your tribe, building your community, and it taking a village.
Yeah. No. And how, like I said, I love to do it when people drop good nuggets and knowledge. Build a community, because what I have learned about this. It really is as big as it is. It really seems small, where you're building relationships and
Yep.
people that you know or went to school with or worked at another studio with. Those are
Yep.
the ones that you know, are going to work on either their project, your project, a project together, or they're going to refer you to a position that they may have heard of. It really is how you kind of move around the industry with the relationships that you make,
Yep.
and everything like that. Uh, as far as directing, what are the type of movie and film projects that you're wanting to tell? What are the type of stories that you're wanting to tell? Is kind of this sci-fi fantasy kind of the genre that you like to play in, or as a storyteller, as a director, getting into comedy, getting into romantic comedy, or getting into drama? What are the kind of stories that you're hoping to tell more of?
Yeah, I would say it's ironically it's as a filmmaker, as a film lover, I love all of it, right? Like and I work in visual effects, and
Yeah,
I love sci-fi. I would say where my as a filmmaker, my hot spot would be, I would say, psychological dramas, psychological thrillers.
mm,
So I would say think Memento. Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite filmmakers. David Fincher is one of my favorite filmmakers.
yeah,
So if you think Memento and then Seven,
yeah.
and
Seven's
like
a good one.
and Inception, like
Inception. Yeah,
those kind of like non-linear storytelling, psychological thrillers, dramas, are probably where I would, most, 8 times out of 10 land in the type of stories that I want to tell. And then from there, you think the sci-fi, if I can include sci-fi within that,
yeah,
within those kind of realm,
yeah,
that's what I would say. Comedy, I love comedy. From watching it, I don't think I have it. I have what it takes to naturally. I normally write like a lot more darker, sad ending
yeah, yeah.
stuff, and people are which when people see the film, they'll be like, oh man, like why is everything just so sad with how your stuff ending? You're an animator, you love Disney, right? And I'm like, I'm more of the Tim Burton Disney than I am the rest of the other Disney.
Hey, it doesn't always end with you're riding off into the sunset. Being
Yeah, it
happy,
ain't always happily ever
Ain't
after,
always
man.
happily ever after. You
But
got to be
no, yeah.
real
So
about it.
I would say Seven and Memento are kind of like if you took the cornerstone or the intersection of two
Yeah,
films of
yeah,
where I want to create those, that would be it.
yeah, yeah. No, I definitely feel you. Like I said, Inception was a great one. I loved Inception.
Yep.
Those ones that really make you think, for sure. Um, moving into like the directing, and now you're into the film festival. What's that experience been like for you? Now that you directed a movie, now you're going out and promoting it, getting it into getting it in front of other people. What's the film festival circuit been like for you so far? I mean,
The film festival circuit for this film has been pretty amazing. Um, this is my third short,
mm,
so I've kind of been through the circuit of going script to screen.
yeah,
This is obviously the most ambitious of the three. Um, and so with this one, though, this is a proof of concept for a feature film idea that Chris also wrote.
yeah,
And so I I'm not the biggest fan of the film festival circuit. I think, in making a film and then sitting in, like you finish a film, that excitement, you're ready to show the world, and then you're sitting on the shelf for like 4 to 6 months
yeah,
to even hear if you got in. And then, premiering, if you're lucky to premiere at the festivals that you want. And so because this was a proof of concept, I didn't want to do a traditional festival circuit with it. I wanted to the goal is to release it online so the
mm,
public can watch it
yeah,
as soon as possible. And so I went in with that I only wanted to do 2 festivals, maybe 3, but mainly it was 2. and then land an online release of it, so the entire public and then use those to kind of as like marketing and promotional and drive momentum towards the full global release. And so I got really lucky. We landed Indie Night, so I strategically went after Indie Night, which are actually a weekly festival. So by the time
they out of
LA.
LA,
They're out of LA, Indie Night Film Festival, and they just opened up an Atlanta version of them, and they do their festival here at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, and so we landed that, and then I was able to get into Newark International Film Festival, which aired a week after that. So literally one Saturday we're here in LA, and then the next Saturday we're premiering, and so I kind of got this West Coast premiere, East Coast premiere, and then within that, we got accepted to Dust. Dust is this online sci-fi platform for short films.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of they're on Tubi.
So we got on there, and they have a really large following. So that was the perfect scenario of I was happy with that.
Yeah,
West Coast premiere, East Coast premiere, and then releasing online. And so we're working out the details of when we release online right now. I'm hoping by September, but we'll see. In the middle of that, we, you submit to a bunch of festivals and forgot which ones you submitted to. And then I got a surprise that we got into Holly Shorts, which is a really big film festival out here. And we just found out the day we're screening is August 13th.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah, we got a really good, slot. We got a Sunday at 7, I think, slot. Sunday at 7:30, the sci-fi slot. And so we're gonna release on that so people can see it again in theaters here in LA. And then the goal is to, right after that, just immediately to try to figure out a release publicly online. And so we're not doing the conventional festival circuit where you do the festival trail for like a year, and then you try to go online. I just wanted to do 2 or 3 and then immediately release it online for the world to watch it.
Well, and like I said, I've never done the film festival circuit, but I always thought it was they were trying to get a deal to get into theaters, not necessarily get it directly online. Type of thing. So it's I found that interesting that was your aim, is to get it out online. Do you
on a large platform though? I would say on a large platform, because the goal is to get the deal. You want a lot of viewership, right? And so with Dust, they have over 1 million subscriber followers.
Yeah.
And so if we get online and we say, let's just say we get 2 million views or 5 million views, that's what we market and take to the studios to get a deal,
to get it fleshed out into
to use that to help greenlight the feature script, right?
Yeah.
So that was the mentality of thinking. It's like, go to the people, go to a platform that has a lot of the people, and if we can use that to leverage in greenlighting the feature script.
And on that note, do you feel like that's such a great thing now, because you have, like I said, platforms online that you can go directly to the people and build a following, as opposed to trying to go straight to Netflix or straight to Disney or something like that, which I always say now is such a great time for a content creator, because you got all these
1,000%.
And
they're looking
out there.
The Netflix and the other folks are looking at these, and it's gonna, like, you're gonna need something that propels you into them being interested in you and the content. So you're gonna have to win over something, right? Like, it's astronomically rare that you just wrote something or created something with no viewership, no accolades, no festival, and they just said, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Let's give you a deal," right? So even in the festival route, they're looking at people who are getting into the bigger festivals and making a ripple at the bigger festivals. So like the Sundances, the South by Southwest, the Tribecas, the TIFFs, the Cannes, right? So you either got to go that route, or say you created content and it gets traction on YouTube or wherever, then you can propel that into something like the filmmakers who they did like a drama version of Fresh Prince. Do you remember that like trailer that went out where they did like a drama version of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
I think so.
And they just put it out, and they just did a mock trailer.
Yeah.
And it caught like storm, and then Will Smith saw it.
Yeah.
And then he attached himself to it and helped them develop it. Like,
yeah,
you're gonna have to do something. And I think now as a creator, instead of having to go through the channels and the gatekeepers, there is an alternative opportunity to just creating content, putting it out, it catching like wildfire, or you building a base and then taking that and packaging it and leveraging it to the bigger studios.
Yeah, because and it's like you said, those studios are doing the same thing. They're scouring the internet to see, who's, like I said, who's got the biggest eyes, and they're gonna come knocking at your door if they see you got a lot of people watching your stuff and really into content.
Or if you you able to monetize that content and just create a bite-sized thing, and then you flip that into something a little bit bigger, and then maybe that's monetized and you make a little bit of money from it, and however you do whatever, whether it's merch or following or Patreon or whatever, and then you just kind of create up. I mean, the opportunity could be you create something, you make a little bit of money, you turn that into flipping to something a little bit bigger, and you just build your platform or your content creation into a space where I know a bunch of people that's doing that right now, actually. That are creating their own content and they're monetizing it, and they're just building and just growing their monetization and their following.
Yeah, like I said, you can, everybody from Mr. Beast to all the
Mr. Beast
out there, they're making, and like I said, a lot of them, a lot of the really big ones, they're making so much on YouTube, they don't even necessarily have to go and get.
They're turning down the deals.
Yeah, they're turning down deals from big studios. One, because they get to control their content probably a little more because it's theirs, and the platform allows them to put their content up. But
you don't want to end up like Squid Games. You don't want to end up like Squid Games, man. I'll let everyone else research that one.
For all of you out there, jump on Google and Google Squid Games, because like I said, that was the big thing. There's always a big thing that comes out. It's just like I said, if it's not done right, or handled right, it can go to the wayside so quickly. But like I said, I think, like I was saying, it's such a great time for a content creator to put their own stuff out there and control their own stuff, because they got all these platforms out now where they can build their own, following and make goo-gobs of money doing it if that's their goal. For sure.
Or reach the audience. My second short, I was going for the traditional festival run at the time. It's called The Bus Ride. And it got into like 2 festivals, 2 like lower tier festivals, mini mids, and one maybe because of quality, but also I think the bigger thing was it was a longer film. It was like 14 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
And traditionally film festivals, you're taking up 2 slots. So unless your film is immaculate or perfect, or you have a big name in it in your short film, you're most likely going to get turned down because you're now taking up 2 slots. And so we didn't get a great run of festivals with that. But then that's right when Amazon opened up Amazon self-publishing, Amazon Video Direct, where you could publish your own films. And it did really well, not from a monetary standpoint, but from reaching an audience. And like, I got 5 stars on it for the entire run. I got like 12 to 15, I think, reviews of people giving 5 stars, and just strangers connecting with it on through Amazon and finding it and really connecting with it. And I think it opened my eyes to, like, you might not be the studio darling, or you might not be the festival darling, but like you can still find your audience. And that's what online publishing and social media and like the YouTubes have opened up a gate where you can find your audience that's going to respond, you know, and
Yeah.
connect with your film.
Yeah, for sure. We got some comments in here. Miss Granny says, amazing work for sure. Appreciate you there. I'm sure
Thank
we'll
you, Granny.
appreciate you there, Maggie. Again, for sure. It is great work. Hydra, Ruel's work are
Thank
really
you.
amazing.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Mr. Kevin is impressed for sure. Kevin Bowens, very impressive for sure. Yeah, 7. Actually, I was gonna watch that earlier today. 7 was my
Nice.
jam. Both of them were good. Yeah, like I said, I like kind of psychological thrillers as well.
Yep.
Like I said, and I don't know if all of you saw the post. Definitely, if you have Netflix, check out They Clone Tyrone. It's a good movie.
Oh yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's done well and acted really well.
Shout out to those brothers, man. Shout out to the brothers who did that. Yeah.
And that's why I'm encouraged. You know, you're starting to see a lot of creators are, you know, really, you know, take hold of their stories and really put out some great stories. And like I said, that's why I love this time, because you're not locked into having to go necessarily. You know, you always would love to, you know, go to Netflix or something like that. But if you're a content creator, you got options to putting your stuff out there. And trust me, your tribe will find you for sure.
Yep.
As a director, what's your process for finding the right talent, working with actors, maybe not necessarily working with actors that have worked with CG elements, because it's kind of a different thing, trying to act against something that may not be there while you're acting, but you just saying. So what's your process for directing? You know, there are actors, directors, and then there are just directors that don't understand actors and make it really hard for the actors. So what's the kind of director that, you know, you are and that you're looking to really, you know, get into and become?
Yeah. I think that's evolved over the years. I think I probably started out as a director who's difficult for an actor, and then I've just grown just in working with actors and working with, you know, other filmmakers and creatives, and watching other filmmakers and creatives. For me, it's a little bit different because I want to be a writer director. So most of the stuff, this was an offshoot. Angel Prime is an offshoot. The very rare thing where I'll come into a situation and direct someone else's story or writing. I wanted that experience. But 9 times out of 10, for the most part, it'll be directing my own stories, and that I write, right? Or I co-write. But traditionally, the story is going to start with me. I develop the story. And so going script to screen is daunting, right? Versus a script is already finished and you're coming in as a director, and there's a sense of, you feel like you have to put your imprint on this, because it didn't start with you. There was this journey started way before you got here, and you've got to kind of flex your muscle and, you know, mark your territory, as a lot of directors do. Being a writer director, you're looking for just inspiration to hand this off to, you know, to other people to come in, to take it to another level. And that's not just with the actors, that's with the editor, that's with the cinematographer, and so forth. And so because of, you know, having to run that marathon, or those marathons from script to screen so many times, there is a sense of, I just kind of inspire the world once I've, you know, flushed out the story and flushed out the screenplay. That's the starting point. And my goal is to just kind of inspire the world and the universe of the story, and the actors can come in and say, okay, I see what you're doing there. Here is how I can take this to here, right? Or what do you think of this? And it's just kind of putting a bunch of perspectives in like a sandbox and seeing how what they take from it, but how they collaborate and interact with other people who are doing the same thing. And so outside of the audition, right, like 80% of it is audition or recruiting. 80% of it is audition and recruiting. And you're just tweaking, hopefully, 5%, 10%, right? You're just tweaking. The person is bringing the other 80 that's blowing you out, blowing you away, blowing you out the water. If you're having to shift or tweak or change more than 20%, it's an uphill battle. You're probably screwed, right? And so I always look at it as like, once you've casted the right like talent, you should just be tweaking 5 to 10%. And just like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Pairing them with this other person, putting them in another person's world, which is costumes, production design, right? And then letting them kind of take what you've kind of laid down and then mold it and elevate it to another. And that's kind of how I like working. And that came out of just the necessity of, it's hard and lonely going script to screen. And so you're gonna focus on inspiring the world and letting these other artists and creatives take it to another level.
And on that note, is it hard, especially on those projects that you're doing it yourself, you're bootstrapping it yourself, to get your friends and get people to help you with it? Like you said, a CG, if you know your film's going to be a CG and you're wanting CG, is that hard for you to kind of convince your friends to kind of help you with it when you're not maybe necessarily paying them if it was a gig job or that type of, hopefully I'm explaining this right.
Yeah.
Especially when you start out and you're not getting funding or anything like that, kind of Kickstarter thing. For you, was that kind of a challenging thing, or was it easy to just call up a friend and say, hey, I'm thinking about this idea, I could really use some help with CG stuff, building out the CG type of thing? Because you have to obviously get people vested in your idea, especially, like I said, if you're not paying them the normal rate that they would be charged, getting if they were doing a gig.
Yeah, I think, I would say this project was probably easier in some senses than most because of where I'm at in my career. Yeah. And you've kind of developed a lot of relationships, and people are willing to do, favors for you. Yeah. And vice versa, you do favors for them. I think the testament, if you have a great idea and a great, story, a great concept, a great script, in the sense of the quality, but also I think the people being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like if you came to someone and says, I'm trying to make Avatar 3. Yeah. And it's like, all right, I don't want to be a part of that. That's too much work, right? But if you have this kind of like minimalistic, concise story, but it's great, and they can see the light at the end of the tunnel, they're more willing to say yes or help. Yeah. And I think, so it's that plus, if you have a great idea, a great screenplay, a great story, if people they're inspired by it, they're motivated by it, and they want to help, right? And that could be you can use that as a gauge to see where your story is. And you can find a way to leverage, if them helping you, it can help them as well. And I think, in being, moving into VFX Supervisors, a bunch of the folks they're just natural friends that I've made in the industry over the years, over 10 years, over 15 years. but also, some of the people I've hired them for work. I've given them, jobs and I've brought them on to projects that I'm VFXing, supervising at work. And so I've just built, a camaraderie. And then I'm like, hey, could you help me with this? Could you help me with just these couple shots?
Yeah.
Right. Could you help me with this? And I've worn out my welcome on those stuff. Whereas I probably used up all my favors already.
All your points.
But, yeah, I've used up all my points for sure. But I think it's those things that I would say. Surprisingly enough, the one thing that I didn't think that would help, that helped, sci-fi content. People not only love sci-fi content, they're drawn to sci-fi stories and content. They're willing to help sci-fi content. And I was surprised at how getting the funding, because we had to get I would say by most measures, this was a big budget short. Yeah. And it was easier to raise the funding than other stuff that I've done, which are just, normal dramas. Yeah. And so I thought that's an additional thing that I was surprised at. And I was like, oh, wow, like people naturally are drawn to sci-fi, and wanting to be a part of sci-fi, wanting to help sci-fi.
Yeah. Is that another part of the industry or what you're doing that you enjoy, kind of getting the funding and going out and
Nope. Nope. No one enjoys going to go beg for money. No one.
I would hope there would be somebody out there that might enjoy the deal.
It ain't this guy. It is not this guy.
Oh man. Oh man. Well, like I said, for all you again just joining in, we've been having an amazing conversation with my friend Ruel, and I always say, the time goes by so quick. Like I said, we're coming up on 2 hours here. But you just don't realize it. While we're closing up here, did you have an illusion that you would be doing something else? Was there anything else that you thought that you might be doing, or did you always this was it? When you saw this, you knew this was what you wanted to do. You didn't think of doing any other profession or any other thing that you wanted to do? Because I find it interesting how people kind of transition into this space. Like I said, I just got done doing a pre-interview with Kevin Guerreau, and he's got his degree in microbiology, which is something totally different than what he's doing now. So was there anything? Was there any other career that you thought you might wanted to have done?
You know what? Like, I was fortunate that since the age of, say, 13, I knew I wanted to do animation. I knew I wanted to be an animator. Specifically, I knew I wanted to be an animator. I would say, and then that evolved into, obviously visual effects and directing and just being a storyteller in general. But I knew I wanted to work on cartoons and tell stories since the age of 13. And I having that obsessive, stubborn kind of lock, and seeing validation and success from an early age to propel that. Prior to that, it would have always been something creative. Yeah. I think I was right before that, I was really into architecture and technical drawing when I was in Jamaica, when I was in like primary school in Jamaica. I think, it was always going to be, at least I hoped it was always going to be something creative. For sure. But then since the age of 13, I knew it was going to be animation and storytelling.
Gotcha. One last question before I close this out here. What would be the best piece of advice that you would give somebody that may be interested in doing what you're doing? Are there certain qualities that you think they should have? What advice would you give another young brother, young sister, any young person that's interested in this.
Yep. Yeah, I would give two separate kind of advice that kind of tie into each other. I would say to start, lock in or develop your sense of curiosity. You need curiosity, and then I would say obsession, right? Those two things. And you can point those two things at whatever.
Yeah.
It could be in animation, could be in visual effects, could be, an athlete, could be what have you. Curiosity and obsession are the first two things you kind of need, and seeing what you're curious about and what you're obsessed with, and honing that. And then that will lead to then developing discipline, right? And dedication, and that kind of consistency will help you. Because from that, with that, it doesn't matter where you are in the world.
Yeah.
Honestly, like if you have a strong sense of curiosity over animation, over storytelling, over directing, and you have a strong sense of obsession over it, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
You're going to figure out how to do it, how to be around the people that's doing it, and how to learn the tools and the software to do it, right? And then the second thing I would say is there are more experiences that you don't even know, that's out there that you don't even know, that you might like, than there are that you've tried that you either like or you think you will like.
Yeah.
Right. So you can come into a thing and say, I want to be an actor, I want to be a director, I want to be an animator, I want to be a particular visual effects artist. But try all the things. Make sure you're constantly trying other things within that, around that, next to that, surrounding that, because you never know something that you might experience, you might stumble into that you tried, that you might even love more than the thing that you thought you initially wanted to go for. And I say that with visual effects supervising. Visual effects supervising is not a standard trajectory for an animator, it's not even in the same trajectory. A compositor, a CG generalist tends to go into visual effects supervision. Yeah. An animator normally becomes an animation, lead, animation supervisor, and animation director. Yeah. And it wasn't until I tried it, and then realized the love that I developed for it in that space. And when I went into at Step Studios, I went in thinking like, oh, I want to try commercial directing. I think I'd like it. 6 months in, I was really good at it, and I wasn't in love with commercial directing. Yeah. And then I ended up loving visual effects supervision, and on top of that, department head of visual effects. And I realized how much I love, and I took to department building, team building, and recognizing other talented artists coming in and helping them and like seeing and helping them on their journey. And that was a reflection of, I wish I had this person. I wish I had me where I'm at now when I came into the game. Yeah. And a natural artist normally doesn't become a department head. It's normally an executive. It's normally that looks at Excel sheets and words and numbers. But my unique perspective of being an artist behind a box, on the box, helped me shape my perspective of what a department should be. It's from the perspective of the artist. Yeah. And I took to like mentoring artists that's coming in and easing them in, giving them sound advice, giving them real advice, easing them in, not just throwing them into the deep end, but saying, I know you want to do this, but make sure you're learning this. Yeah. I'm going to ease you into the artistry of it and help you develop. And had I not gotten an opportunity at Step to do visual effects supervision and then building out their visual effects and animation department, I wouldn't have known I would not only like that stuff, but be good at it. So yeah, try as much stuff around the thing you think you want to do, because there's so many other things out there that you'd be surprised that you might love it and you might be really good at it that you don't know.
Yeah, no, some amazing advice for sure. Of course. Hey. I'm on the advice. Try
I
different things.
could have used that explosion in my film. Man, I should have came to you.
Hey, we have to talk. Definitely. It's all, but again, I totally agree. Try different things. You may be surprised. Like I said, you might find out, animation isn't necessarily what I want to do. Modeling isn't necessarily what I want to do. Rigging. There's so many different avenues to go down. But until you try it and see whether or not you like it and have the passion for it, then you're not going to know and not going to continue to do it for sure. This has been an amazing, fun conversation, Roy. I'm so appreciative. I've said this to you before the show, said it to you many times. I cannot thank you enough for, one, connecting with me in the first place, but two, wanting to come on the show and be a part of the Color of Motion family. You definitely have shared an immense amount of knowledge, and I'm just super excited about your journey because I know it's just starting on what you're doing, and getting into putting out your kind of content. So I can only imagine and can't wait to see what comes out, even more from you and what you're doing. If you could hang on for just 1 second in the green room while I close out the show, I appreciate it. But everybody, please help me thank again Mr. Ruel Smith for taking a little bit of his time, coming on, blessing us with his skill and his passion and his knowledge. So help me thank again my good friend Ruel.
Thank you.
Hang out for just 1 second, Ruel, while I close out the show. I would appreciate it. Make sure, though, that you get connected with Ruel. You can find him on all his social media sites. Definitely want to make sure that I get this up. Check out his website, realruel.com. Connect with him on Instagram, LinkedIn. But make sure you check out more of his work. Like I said, he's putting out some great work.
Thank you. And thank you as well. Thank you as well,
see,
Don. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, man.
you so much, Ruel, being on the show. Hang out again just 1 second while I close out the show here.
Will do.
Everybody, I hope you have enjoyed this. I have, like I said, I have so much fun doing this show, and I hope you, if you didn't catch, like I said, the tips that Ruel gave, find out your passion and what you enjoy doing and what you really have a passion. And like I said, this for me, doing the show, is really a passion for me. That's why I love the friends that I make. That's why I love coming to you, the viewers, and really sharing them with you, because I know there are a lot of people that are wanting to get into the industry. And like I said, I have a lot of questions and things that I'm learning as well, just to be a part of this industry. So I just have such an immense amount of respect and admiration for all the creatives that come on, because they're just doing some amazing things, and it helps to expose you to the creators that are out there that you may not necessarily know. There are a lot of great creators of color out here creating some great work. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of the show. Like I said, I always look forward to bringing you the best guests to come on and share. Next week, for sure, is going to be, no exception. It's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to this one as well. Next week's guest is Mr. Alexander Perez, podcast host with Comic Crusaders. Super fun guy, man. Like I said, this is going to be a fun episode because he's A hilarious brother there. So looking forward to having Alex come on the show and share his passion for comics and all things comics. So this has been, like I said, an amazing show. I love coming to you each and every week for sure. Definitely can't do this without one, my very special friends coming on, and two, you, the viewers, always supporting and checking out the show. Miss Maggie, appreciate you there. Yes, another amazing guest for sure. And I know appreciates all the love that you've shown him for sure. So, with that, I think this train has finally come into the station here, and we can close it down. But again, thank you for giving me a little bit of your time over the weekend, on this Saturday weekend. But I'm always appreciative of it. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, everybody. Have a great weekend, and cheers.